I did this about six or 7 years ago now. How time flies, and it's something that we're starting to be quite hot on at Birmingham mini meetings, and to try and help each other when we teach, because sometimes, to be quite honest, we make a real mess of things even now, and you say to yourself, now how could we have done that a bit better? As long as it's fun. And I think teaching for me in origami, one of the main things is that it's fun. But there are two things that I'd like to say right up front about teaching any class, and that's the statement, fail to prepare and you prepare to fail. Say that again. Fail to prepare and prepare to fail. And the other one is that nothing is taught unless something is learnt. Now, I'm not a teacher, but I know there are probably teachers here who were perhaps taught that in their teacher training. But often, if you don't actually check whether if somebody has actually taught something at the end of it, you can't really say that I've taught them anything, and you might have a nasty surprise at the end of it, and find that they can't do it at all. And I'll go back to my statement, why are we doing this? If somebody actually can't go home and perhaps with a few notes, and if they like the model that much, to actually repeat what they've been taught, if they can't do it, then somehow something has gone wrong. And we have to accept that sometimes something has gone wrong. So, okay, so you're faced with a class like this, for instance, and if there was only a class of six people, then it would be different. But more often than not, we fall into the trap of using small paper. I call this stamp folding. Wayne, what I'd like you to do, and others can do it if you like, I'd like you to actually open your hand like this, and we're talking about thumb and middle finger, and I want you to reduce until you actually are spanning this size of paper, right? Now look how big, what are the distance that Wayne's fingers are. They are the size of a stamp. So, if you were, this is what Wayne sees, paper the size of a stamp. And it is true. It is a lot more difficult to actually teach with bigger paper than it is with smaller paper. That was when I learnt, yes, when you're talking about big paper like this, actually practice. Practice, practice, practice. And while we're on the subject of paper, think about the colour. And whether it's a plain colour or other sort of colour. Now, this might seem like a good idea. A nice black on white, so you can actually get through your sequence and the actual difference and things. It is so obvious where it is. This is what you should be using. Until you turn the paper over and let's say you've got a crease down there. Now I want to fold this edge to this particular crease. I know I haven't folded it very well, but I tell you, if I had folded it well, you still can't see it. And our good friend Robert Harbin was a magician, and a lot of his props, if you actually look at the zigzag girl and all the stuff behind, it's black. Why is it black? Because they want to hide things. Black is a very good colour to hide things. But we don't want to hide things, we want to show things. So please do not use black or dark brown or dark green or whatever. And in that area, there are other things, and you find this out when you try it. Try pattern paper.
Dollar bills.
Pardon?
Dollar bills, a complete nightmare.
Dollar, yeah.
Because they're small.
But it's difficult enough folding pattern paper and dollar bills, you say. So why do we use pattern paper? It is a crazy sort of thing to use. And the other thing, and we don't do it much now, but as Ray was running through at a mini meeting, the Tutankhamun that he made 40 odd years ago, wasn't it, Ray? And in 5 minutes time, a nice model to actually go in there. And of course Tutankhamun's gold, so why not use gold paper? But gold, when you're actually teaching with it, is really dodgy because it picks up reflections, and again you can have that same problem. So it's best to use basic nice sort of colours and things like that, but don't use green if you've got a green shirt on. And I thought that people with colour blindness, in a way, in origami didn't exist until a few months ago, where I came across one. I was teaching a group of ladies, and she said, "Can you not use that red with a green shirt or whatever?" So that was just another one to be added to the list. I think that one of the best tips I can give you, and one that you probably know already, is to practice the model beforehand. Now, but what I always try and do, if I'm coming to a mini meeting, and mini meetings are great because it doesn't matter if you make mistakes at a mini meeting. Yeah, you're going to get all the heckling or whatever, but it's a lot of fun, and it doesn't, and you haven't got those time constraints that we have in conventions, which we will have in Stratford. But what I always try and do is to fold the model, even if I think I know it inside out, and I've been sort of, folding it. I always try and run through it again the night before, and I'll even try and do it a couple of hours before the mini meeting, just in case I forget a step. Usually I've got the instructions with me, but I'd rather not look at them if I have to. And it's very interesting. I remember talking to Margaret, and Margaret had said, I learnt that a week ago, didn't you? And it's so easy to remember, to forget a step. And if you can just spend the time, and it's probably only 5 or 10 minutes, just running through it just before you are going to actually teach it, it's worth doing. It's worth doing here, to go up to your room or into the lounge or whatever just before you're going to teach something, particularly if you're a little bit unsure or you're a little bit nervous, which affects all of us. Just run through it, and that will give you the confidence to actually see it through.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course you can, Wayne.
Often I like to teach on the paper. You're looking at the paper as you see it, which means I've got to practice it backwards. And one of the useful tips to do, if you want to, is stand in front of a mirror and teach it to yourself in front of a mirror, and see how you're holding the paper and see how it's looking to you. And the other thing that I also practice a lot, and if you see me demonstrating to people, is what magicians call patter, the talk. The talk will very often be the same. And the other thing is, if you practice what you're going to say and how you're going to say it.
And of course, now Wayne, he comes down to the Birmingham meetings, and Wayne sits on a chair and teaches. That is Wayne's way of doing it. Now, let's deal with this, because you've got your left and your rights or whatever. If I can, I prefer to teach against a wall. And the reason for that is that the paper is the same way around as your students' is. Their hands are the same place as your hands. And I don't get my left and my right mixed up or whatever. And as long as the paper is big enough, that seems to be the way that suits me. And there are times where there aren't walls. There are times where you are faced with this teaching across your chest. And to me, actually, it's quite alien to do it that way. I don't find it easy. But the only way to actually do it is, like Wayne is saying, is to look at a mirror, and a full-length mirror, and see what the student is going to see. I don't know, I've never seen Nick do it, but I've often seen at our mini meetings, because I'm going to stand up a little bit, because you're teaching like this, and then it comes to folding something, we will say, now, what I want you to do now is to fold that over there. Now, what do you see from that?
See the bottom of your paper.
Nothing. You have to turn it like that to the student and say, do that. And that probably means that you've got to fold the thing first. One thing I haven't tried yet, actually, and with this business, the fact that you're sitting down, I don't think it's probably a bad idea to have a beanbag on your lap. Well, I'm going to try that, perhaps at a mini meeting, because then if you want to actually do the fold first, you don't have to go walking over to a table to do it. It's there for you. And then back up and show it like that. But it is so easy to look around and say, yes, I want you to do that, but you may as well forget it, you know, because nobody can see it. Are we hitting the mark sometimes? Are we a few toe curlers? Probably the best thing best course the company ever sent me on was a 2-day course on effective presentation. And oh dear, the video cameras were in right from the start, and I made a real pig's ear of it and whatever. But that's how you learn. But one thing that I always remembered that the teacher said was, get the first 30 seconds out of the way. Just teach. If you're a little bit nervous at the start, just sit down. Even if you want to, write it not in written English, write in verbal English. You know, not I am, you do I'm, but actually just write. And even recording tape recorders, we had those in those days. So that you've got the first 30 seconds. If you can get past that first 30 seconds, everything else is all right. And we all think, after we've done it so many times, you think, well, I'll do this standing on my head. But something can throw you, can't it? And the yeah, the other thing is that I was into one presentation and I froze. And there was all my peers, hey, it's Mick Guy, you know. And of course the whole thing was being videoed. And then it came to playback time. So it was under the table stuff. And the teacher said to me, he says, Mick, the first thing I want you to do with this, he says, I want you to count the number of seconds that you froze. And I can tell you now, it was no more than 4 seconds. To you, it was half an hour. But it was only 4 seconds. He says, if that happens again, just think, oh, it's only 4. Just use it to actually think it through. Good things like that. Right, we're going to talk a bit about the layout of rooms. At Stratford, we're going to have most of the rooms laid out in this C-shaped formation, which seems to be the best or the most popular shape. So we're actually going to have C-shaped formations. Now, if you've only got a very small class, move the furniture around, get it to suit you, as long as you put it back to where it is. This might work against us because we've got a similar sort of situation where the light's coming in from there. So you don't actually stand that in. That's another thing that came out because you can't see it because of the light behind. Like for me, Dave is like a silhouette really, Dave Venn down the bottom there. But there is this issue with C's, and the fact is that you can get down to help people. Yeah, the problem with a fat C, which is what is going to be at Stratford sometimes, is if you don't watch it, you finish up teaching the same thing 3 times. There, there, and there. If you want to slow something up, do that. The other thing about having this sort of shape here is that I found that if once, very early on in the teaching, you go down and actually help somebody out, then they expect you to help them out every other time afterwards. It's true. And
not unreasonable, is it?
Pardon?
Not an unreasonable expectation, is it?
Why? Well, so in other words, they want a one-to-one experience, teaching experience.
But if they're not grasping it...
Right. So what we're going to do, if they're not grasping it, why? Now, either the teaching's not very good, right, or they've come into a class where the model is a little bit more difficult for them than they thought. And what we're going to do at Stratford, and we would like you to all to do this right at the start, is to explain. You're obviously going to explain what the model is and who it's by, which is very important, but ask them if they want a buddy next to, if they want somebody to sit next to them, right, to help them if they get a little bit out of their depth. We're ever so good at actually helping each other when we're side by side. But so in other words, if somebody comes in and you get a feeling that they're going to be a little bit out of their depth, even if it's halfway through, feel free to actually move the class around a bit, because they're going to slow you up. And if you have got this time constraint, and you've got, what you will have in the class this time is 50 minutes teaching time. That allows 5 minutes to get the class going. So they're all going to be 1 hour slots, but there's going to be 5 minutes either side of the hour. 5 minutes to sort of leave, get to your next class, and 5 minutes to do it afterwards. So, as I say, you may not agree with everything. You know, Nick said this is not an unreasonable request. And of course we all go around and help each other. But if it's happening every step, there's something wrong. There is. But, yeah. But what I would say is that we're the only organisation that expects people to come along and teach models, and we don't teach them how to teach. That's why we're doing this. We are. With the... You know, somebody could walk through the door, I'd like to teach this, we haven't got a clue how good they are or whatever. And so, anyway, I want to go back just a couple of things on paper. If you... This is obvious, but let's say you've decided now to get the right size of paper, but the model that you're actually teaching is quite complicated. And it will only take about 10 moves, right, before the paper is down to this size. So you're back to where you started. So it is, if you're doing something very complicated, it is good to actually do the blue Peter, I made this earlier or whatever it was, start with a piece of paper that is twice this size, and then get up to that particular step and then swap over. Obvious, really. Another thing, and I picked this up from, whether she did it on purpose or not, Ruth. She was teaching something which was a model which was very symmetrical, but it was important that she had the paper the right way up, or you had the paper the right way up as she did. And because everything was symmetrical, there was something a little bit different in the middle, but it was difficult to work out. And I noticed that it was a lot easier because she had actually folded a corner over. Now that corner could be used later on or whatever, but when she actually had that like that, it was pretty obvious which way your paper should be up because you folded a little corner over as well. And that was a nice little thing. Of course, don't be afraid to use the pen. It's good with certain difficult crease patterns and things like that. Why not use the pen to actually show you where the valley and the mountain is? And one thing that I came across only I think I was doing the flag at the Campanile in Birmingham. And of course what we're trying to do now is not to get unnecessary creases in. So we've replaced a lot of our necessary creases with just pinch folds. So in other words, if you put just a little mark there and you open it up, I bet you can't see that there, can you? No, but what I've done since is to make sure there's a little red dot there, and you know where that pinch mark is now. So if I'm now going to fold to that pinch mark, pardon? Yeah, I wouldn't use black. No, I wouldn't use black.
I would question whether should you be using pinch marks.
Yeah. Okay.
When you're perhaps teaching something.
First time through. Yeah.
If your aim is to sort of teach something to the best of ability so people can fold it, you perhaps shouldn't be using pinch marks. You might say that this crease isn't necessary.
What do you think, Nick? Because you're a pinch man, aren't you? You put a lot of pinch folds in.
I do with experienced folders.
Right.
With beginners, I generally just put it all the way through.
Yeah.
I like them to use a pencil. So start to the corner, follow this crease along. When it meets another crease, put a little cross there, then fold the corner to the cross.
No. What you are taught at any presentation is you give the notes out at the end.
Yes. But the other thing is, I would question whether I would not necessarily be teaching a model in the same way as I would perhaps fold it.
No. We've got 3 minutes to go because we're going to finish on time, aren't we? Absolutely. One last thing I want to say, and if Linné and Oppenheimer had been given a ruler, we'd have all gone home with very sore wrists. Because she was adamant, and I think she's right, that you should never, unless all else fails, touch the student's paper. And I find myself doing it sometimes, perhaps out of frustration because they can't actually do it. And you think, look, it's like this. So what I always do, if I do have to touch the paper, is I actually fold it and then unfold it again, and I say, right, now do it yourself and while I'm there. Because I think if you do all the steps for them, it comes back to if nothing is taught unless something is learnt. And so I want to thank you all, and let's just keep thinking about it. And thank you very much.